Even in a digital world where screens rule and attention is key, nothing beats paper. Because when inspiration strikes and you need it, it's there for you, always available. Sometimes the mouse just doesn't cut it, but that's when ideas can really flow. It's a place for tracking progress, so when you put in the work, you can see just how far you've come. It's somewhere for you to unload your mind and bring your thoughts into the real world. Because deep down, you know, nothing beats paper.
So that was a short spec piece for the brand Field Notes, which create these really nice little notepads, which honestly I think are really cool and I've genuinely used for quite a few years now. So the main idea for a project like this was to have something where I can have full creative control, but then the end result is something which hopefully most businesses can look at and see some value in it. So when I had the idea to make the advert around these notepads, one thing that I definitely didn't want to do was to try and talk about like the quality of the paper or how great the size of the notepad is. For me personally, that's not really the angle that I like to take, and obviously there is a time and place for doing that kind of thing with a product video, but yeah, for me, if I can get a bit of a story in there, if I can get some emotion across, then that's my kind of thing. So I had some keywords that I wanted this piece to be, and those were authentic, warm, and organic. So for it to be authentic, I tried to create these scenes which were realistic and situations where people genuinely would write in a notepad. And then in terms of the warmth, I tried to get that through in the narration and the voiceover, but also then through the grading of it as well. And then to keep it organic, I made sure that I shot everything handheld, and then the lighting was never over the top. So before undertaking a project like this, I did do a little bit of planning beforehand using Milnote. I just kind of came up with the ideas for each scene and then put together little mood boards just to get the overall vibe for the shoot. This is also where I put together the script for the voiceover. So if you're wondering about where that came from, that actually came from Fiverr. I think altogether it cost about £65. Which I think is pretty good considering like the level that he was at. Like, I think he's done stuff for like really big brands. So yeah, a little bit of money for a passion project, but I think it was worth it. So when writing the script, I already knew pretty much, like when he says stuff like tracking progress and putting in the work, like I already knew that I had a gym scene that was gonna fit perfectly over the top. Because I think those little moments are quite important where the words in the narration like really link with the footage. I think it just makes it a lot more cohesive.
So when you put in the work, you can see just how far you've come.
So when it comes to shooting, I do try and like to keep a shot list handy, whether that's on my phone or on a notepad. Having like a little shot list and kind of going through one by one and being like, I've got to push in, I've got a pan, I've got a tripod shot, like just covering yourself, because it's kind of quick to do once the scene is set. You can lock it off on a tripod, get 10 seconds, take it off, push in, like it's pretty easy to do. So yeah, it's just good to like cover yourself in those situations. Like I know that every scene is going to be like 10 seconds, but I always end up with a selection of footage which has all these different alternatives, and like it really helps me out in the edit. Don't get me wrong, it like makes the choice really hard, like knowing what one to pick, but at the end of the day, like you would much rather have all these alternative shots than you just shot like a tripod shot and then you're like, oh, I kind of wish like it went in or moved around. So yeah, just a good habit to get into. So with this first scene, we're actually in my home garage, and believe it or not, I did tidy things up before shooting. I know it looks pretty messy, but kind of go in for that like home workshop kind of vibe, and yeah, I think it kind of suits what I'm going for. So the garage already had like these tube lights pre-installed. Couldn't control the temperature, couldn't control the brightness, but I just kind of looked through the camera and I thought, you know what, these look pretty good. So just went with it, used some tape to control the spill coming off of them. And yeah, it was just looking pretty nice. So put some atmosphere spray into the garage, and yeah, just got the lights to bloom a little bit more, created a bit of atmosphere, I guess you'd say. And that's pretty much it for the setup for this one. By the way, all the people that feature in this video are all friends of mine or people that I know already. So I would recommend, if you want like an environment which is quite relaxed and you can laugh and joke around, and you don't have that kind of friction of a paid model and you've only got like a couple of hours or something like that, definitely try and get your friends involved, because it just makes things that little bit easier. So the vibe I was going for with this one is inspired by a video that Carlo Stigliano shot a couple of years ago. I think it was like a cinematography practice kind of video, and yeah, the vibe that he sort of got in this scene with like the warm lighting, tube lights, this little garage, like definitely the kind of thing I was going for. So I actually kept screenshots from that video to hand on my phone, so in between shooting I could reference those and sort of just get little ideas on things like composition, exposure, and yeah, it was just really helpful and a good example of seeing somebody's work and being inspired by it and then trying to put your own spin on it in your own work. I probably could have made like a full edit just from this garage scene, but I had to be really brutal in the edit. I only needed like 8 seconds or something like that. So yeah, I had to be quite savage and just pick the shots that kind of served the story. So for this home office environment, I've essentially just got my friend to put his desk in his living room, and then I've moved things around just to make it quite visually appealing. To light our subject, I use an Aperture 120D through a sheet of diffusion. I've put that shadow side just to get like a soft key light. So from there I just went one by one through the shot list and made sure that I had enough footage for the scene. There was one shot that I kind of stumbled upon by accident, and that was this really cool shot of the reflection on my friend's glasses. And then thinking back to the narration and how that mentions screens, I kind of thought, this is perfect. So yeah, I just spent a little bit of time making sure I had this really cool shot of like the screen rolling past on his glasses. And yeah, it went into the start of the video, and personally it's one of my favourite shots. So I ended up paying for a day pass to go to a local gym to shoot something, and they were completely chilled when it came to me filming. I think that's kind of because there's so many people these days that go in and record themselves working out for Instagram or for YouTube that it's kind of just become quite normal. I remember a few years ago it was really hard to be able to record stuff in a gym, but it's just becoming the norm now. So yeah, I just didn't take it too far. Really minimal stripped back setup, and yeah, no audio because they're playing music, but yeah, I just went in there with my small camera bag and yeah, all went really smoothly. So I got some shots walking into the gym, followed by a few sets of shoulder press, position myself in a few different angles, put it together in post, and you can sort of chop it all up and pretend that it was just one set. Then I've got loads of shots of her like picking the bar up, putting it down again, looking out of breath, looking into the mirror, and then loads of stuff to do with writing in the notepad, which I honestly just had to bin most of them. I could only put a couple in there, and some of them are definitely like my favourite shots on the whole shoot, but you always have to go with the shots that serve the purpose of the story, and you can't always force your favourite shots into it if they don't work, which is annoying, but they can always go into a show reel or find their way into another video, so it's not the end of the world. So initially I really struggled trying to light this living room because it was dark outside at the time. I really got in my own head like trying to work out how can I make it look cinematic and moody and things like that, and then I just thought, wait, all I need is like a really nice ambient living room environment. So yeah, I went back to basics, just tried to light the space rather than the face, put a light into the ceiling, just brought the levels up, and yeah, it worked really nicely. So this last scene is essentially me going to a local forest at golden hour, getting some nice panning shots of the trees and laying down the notepads on a log to try and get like a nice ending shot. I ended up going with one of many variations that I did take, where I placed the notepad down on the log, but me being really silly, I forgot to take a microphone, so I actually copied and pasted some audio from earlier in the film, laid it over the top, and it worked a treat. So for a project like this, the editing is quite self-explanatory. It's kind of just simple cuts all the way through, but music-wise, I got that from Artlist. Sound effects, either Artlist or I recorded them in the moment. In terms of the grade, it's a combination of using Phantom LUTs as a base, and then on top of that using a creative LUT at like a 30 or 40% opacity, and then using things like temperature, curves, just to kind of get it to where I like it. So like always, I shot this on the Sony A7Siii and the 24-70 G Master lens, but one thing that you might not have expected is that at least half of the shots, maybe even the majority, were actually shot on these little Canon FD lenses. And the cool thing about that is I've been really wanting to shoot with some vintage glass for a while, but it's always a little bit high stakes when you're on a client shoot. So being able to put them to use on a project like this is really cool. It kind of suited the look that I was going for as well, and I have to admit, I'm pretty impressed. So I got 2 of these lenses for £40 each, and I have to admit, it is really funny how I can put 2 shots next to each other, one shot on a lens worth £1,300 and the next worth £40. And that just really makes me laugh, because it's like, nobody really notices until you tell them. Obviously, there are characteristics that you can kind of see if you really want to look at it, but when it's a fast-paced kind of thing like this, nobody really knows. And I just find that quite funny, because yeah, £40 lens, nobody really knows, but I've told you now, so now you know. So that's everything that went into creating this spec piece, and hopefully you can see that you just don't need to spend an awful lot of money to create something like this. Just get your idea, get some friends together, try and use the locations that you've already got at your disposal, and yeah, just go for it. Things like this aren't just great because you end up with a new video to show potential clients, but it allows you to be adventurous in a low stakes environment, make mistakes, and then learn from it, and then take that into new projects in the future. Also, it's just so nice being able to shoot something with full creative control, no deadlines, and you can just fully jump into the creative process. I'll see you next time. Cheers.